Silent Screams, hey, welcome back to Silent Screams, the place where your darkest fears come to life. Tonight, I've got something special for you, a story that will make you think twice before you knock on a stranger's door this Halloween. Trick-or-treating might seem like innocent fun, but what if you find yourself at a house that isn't playing by the same rules? Grab your blanket, turn off the lights, and get ready, because this one's going to get under your skin. Let's jump into it. It was the Halloween before everything changed, before I realized that some houses should never be visited, no matter how tempting they look with their decorations and bowls of candy. I was 15 at the time, still hanging on to the tradition of trick-or-treating because it was my last year before I felt like I'd be too old for it. My best friends, Jess, Ryan, and Luke, were with me, just like they'd been every year since we were kids. It was a normal night at first. We'd been making our rounds, hitting all the usual spots. Our neighborhood wasn't huge, but there were a few houses that always went all out for Halloween. The usual suspects. Old Mrs. Howard, with her plastic skeletons and fog machine, always handed out full-sized candy bars. Then there was Mr. Jeffries, who made his yard into a creepy graveyard. Same houses, same routine, nothing out of the ordinary. Until we came to the end of Oak Street. There was a house none of us had noticed before, and I swear it hadn't been there last year. It was one of those old Victorian-style houses, the kind that looks haunted even in broad daylight. The porch light was flickering, casting strange shadows on the overgrown lawn, and the windows looked wrong. Like something was watching from behind the glass. The strangest part. The house was completely dark except for that one flickering porch light, but there was a single bowl of candy sitting on the steps. No one around. No decorations. No sound. Is that house new? Jess asked, squinting at it like she was trying to remember if she'd ever seen it before. No way, Luke said. I've walked by here a million times, never noticed it. Maybe they just fixed it up or something, Ryan suggested. He was the rational one, always trying to make sense of things. But something about the house felt wrong. Like it didn't belong. I should have listened to my gut, but instead, I stepped forward, drawn by the curiosity and the weird pull the house seemed to have. The others followed behind me, hesitant but too curious to stay back. We walked up to the porch, and I could feel the air get colder, heavier. There's no one here, Jess said, looking around. Maybe we should just, before she could finish, Luke reached out and grabbed a piece of candy from the bowl. I'll never forget the sound that followed. It wasn't a normal creak of a house settling or the wind rustling the trees. No, it was like something deep inside the house exhaled, a slow, guttural breath that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. What the hell was that? Ryan whispered, his voice tight with fear. I don't know, I said, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. The air felt thick now, like it was pressing down on us, and the shadows seemed to shift, almost alive. We should go, Jess said, her voice trembling. But we didn't move. Something was keeping us there, some unseen force that made it impossible to turn around and leave. I didn't realize until later that it wasn't curiosity anymore, it was fear. The kind of fear that freezes you in place, that tells you something is very, very wrong. The porch light flickered again, and then went out completely. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Not a lot, just a crack, but enough for us to see inside. And what we saw wasn't right. There was no light inside, no furniture, nothing but darkness. And in that darkness, there were shapes, figures, moving slowly, barely visible, but there. Watching us. Let's go. I shouted, finally breaking the spell that had kept us there. I grabbed Jess's arm, and we turned to run, but Ryan and Luke weren't moving. Guys. I yelled, my voice rising in panic. They were staring the door, their faces pale, eyes wide with terror. It was like they were in a trance, unable to tear themselves away from whatever they were seeing inside that house. I pulled Jess harder, and we stumbled down the steps, but as we did, I glanced back, and that's when I saw it. There was a figure standing just inside the doorway, tall and thin, its face hidden in the shadows. It wasn't human. I could feel it. Something about the way it moved, the way it stood there, watching us, it was wrong. And then it started to step forward. Ryan. Luke. Come on. Jess screamed, her voice cracking with fear. Finally, they snapped out of it and bolted after us. We ran down the street, not stopping until we were far away from that house, our lungs burning, hearts racing. When we finally stopped, none of us spoke for a long time. What the hell was that? Luke finally said, his voice shaking. I don't know, man, Ryan replied, rubbing his face like he was trying to wake up from a bad dream. I don't know. For the rest of the night, none of us could shake the feeling that we were being followed. Every shadow, every noise made us jump. And when we finally made it back to my house, we didn't talk about it. We just sat there in silence, too afraid to ask the questions that were burning in our minds. The next day, I went back to Oak Street. I don't know why, I just needed to see if the house was really there. But when I got to the end of the street, it was gone. No house. No porch light. Just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. I asked around, but no one seemed to remember the house. Not even the neighbors. It was like it had never existed. But we knew. We remembered. And the worst part. That night, when we were running, I could have sworn I heard footsteps behind us. I didn't dare look back then, but now I wonder if something followed us. Something that's still out there, waiting. And the scariest part of all, Halloween is coming again. Did you hear that? Jess's voice cut through the silence, snapping me out of my thoughts. Hear what? I asked, my heart starting to race again. She turned to me, her face pale. Footsteps outside. For a moment, I thought she was joking, but then I heard it too, a slow, deliberate scraping sound, like something was moving outside the window. Ryan stood up, his face a mask of fear. No way. No way it's happening again. We all froze, staring at the window, waiting for something to happen. The sound stopped, leaving us in an eerie silence that felt even worse than the noise. Then, the front door creaked. We didn't move. We couldn't. And slowly, ever so slowly, the door began to open. Just a crack, but enough for us to see the darkness beyond. And in that darkness, something was waiting. 3 interconnected scenes in one picture. 1, a shadowy figure emerges from a foggy street corner as trick-or-treaters nervously approach a house with dimly lit, flickering lights. 2, the children open the door to find an empty house filled with ominous, dark figures watching from the shadows, their faces hidden in masks. 3, the final scene shows the trick-or-treaters running away, their faces frozen in terror, while the mysterious figure looms large behind them, its hand outstretched as if to grab them. Integrated style, cinematic horror, dramatic lighting, highly detailed textures, film grain effect.